Hi, welcome to the Women Bunny Business Podcast with myself, Dr. Priti Basra. And today I've got with me Olivia Shipstone, who is a financial advisor and is from OCS Financial Planning. So thank you so much for joining us today, Olivia. I'm really excited about this episode because I wanted to speak to a financial planner, financial advisor on the podcast for a little while now. So if you don't mind just introducing yourself and just letting me know sort of a little bit about you, if that's okay, and our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So as you kindly introduced, thank you for having me. I'm Olivia Shipstone. Yes, I'm a financial advisor. I've been advising for 10 years now. I'm also a chartered financial planner and a fellow of the Personal Finance Society. So it's just kind of like the highest qualifications you can get in our industry to be able to advise. I think that's really important when I'm advising my clients, to make sure I've got that breadth of knowledge, because you'll probably appreciate that no financial position is the same and everyone's circumstances are different. So it's really nice to be able to obviously adapt my skill set to whatever the client's looking for, really. Good job you found me, to be honest, because less than 14% of financial advisors are women. So yeah, it's probably why you were looking for a while to find a woman financial advisor.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. So can I just ask then, this is just my ignorance or naivety, what's the difference between a financial planner and a financial advisor? Is it the same thing or are they different?
Yeah, they're the same. It's whatever people want to call themselves. So financial advisor, financial planner, wealth manager, wealth advisor, all the same. The most important part, I guess, when people are saying what they do is the qualifications that they have. And most importantly for clients that are starting a journey with a financial advisor is that they're regulated. So we have a regulated body, so the Financial Conduct Authority regulates us, and it's really important that if you're working with someone, you work with a regulated person, particularly with social media these days. There's obviously people that have amazing knowledge, they're just not regulated, so it just gives no security to individuals, and just that security, really.
And in terms of, well, you mentioned that you can have like financial planner, advisor, wealth manager, wealth advisor. Is there a reason that you haven't called yourself a wealth planner or wealth advisor? And if so, why?
Great question. Actually, when I first set up my business, it was OCS Wealth Management, and I changed it probably, oh God, I can't remember now, maybe 3 years ago, to OCS Financial Planning. No major change. I just thought that the wealth part can come across quite prestigious, and for me it's really important that it's accessible for everyone. And also, how I like to work with people is obviously on a friendly manner, and just be approachable more than anything. People are off put by kind of approaching financial advisors because they think it's not right for them, but I always think it's definitely worth at least having a conversation to see. And I just think that having that wealth element is just kind of got those connotations that might have put people off. So that's exactly why I refer to myself more down the financial planning route, really.
And I suppose as sort of on the other side of it, like I'm maybe the user of a financial planner, I would be put off by wealth management or wealth planning. So I wouldn't think to myself, I would think, well, I'm not wealthy. Like, so, I'm not wealthy, so I can't go to these guys. These guys deal with rich people. Whereas if it's financial planning, everybody needs some financial planning in their lives. So I can understand why you position yourself as that. Can I ask you about your journey? Like, did you wake up one day and you thought, I want to be a financial planner, or is it something that you sort of always knew that you wanted to do, or did you fall into it?
Yeah. So I actually come from a family of teachers. So all of my family are teachers. And I went to university in Aston. So I did international business with French. And as part of my university degree, I did a year's placement. So I worked at HSBC in Paris. Great experience when you're like, what was I, like 20 odds at the time, like living in Paris, living my best life. But I also realised I didn't really want to work. It was great because I didn't want to work for a big corporation. Effectively, in a world that I love, finances, and I like, because I love maths, but didn't want to just be another number, and really wanted to help people on a more personal level. So I kind of rethought, came back to my parents and was like, that's it, I want to be a maths teacher. Because obviously they're all teachers. And my mum was like, Olivia, no, it's not for you. Like, you love maths, but yeah, 98% of the people won't, your students won't like maths, and you'll just get frustrated. And I was like, okay. And so she actually, because she was a head teacher, her chair of governors with a financial advisor, and she was like, oh, I can get you some work experience, maybe try something else that's a bit more on a personal level. As basically I did some experience there in my 3rd year of uni, specifically working with someone else within the business that had that connection to my mum, so I could really decide for myself whether I enjoyed it or not. And loved it. So finished my last year at uni, and then they gave me a job back where I did that kind of placement after uni. So I started training with them, and then I trained and then kind of went through like administration, but I always knew I wanted to kind of do the client facing stuff. And yeah, I went through a training program with them and qualified with them before a few years after that I set up on my own. So I was advising, like I said at the beginning, I've been advising for 10 years. I was very young for the industry when I first started. But yeah, it was the best decision I've made. And I feel also very lucky to kind of find my forever career path as well so early. I actually think it's down to doing that placement year as well. Otherwise I would have started like in a big corporation on these grad schemes. It's like 2 years, probably might not have figured things out as quickly because I was enjoying living in London or whatever that looked like. So yeah, that's my journey really. It's kind of, if some of it feels like it happened for a reason, but no, I didn't kind of at the age of 10 think I want to be a financial a bit more exotic careers at that time.
So a couple of questions really on the back of that. The first thing is obviously you mentioning that you started working for somebody and then you went into setting up for yourself. What made you do that? Like what happened? What was that sort of pivotal moment?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed working with them, and I can't thank them enough. Obviously, the support they gave me at the beginning, and obviously their wealth of knowledge as well. When I'm learning everything, they were really experienced and really good at what they do. However, I felt like personally, I wanted to kind of had ideas for the business to go in not in a different direction, but add a different kind of string to their bow. And it wasn't something that really aligned with them, but I was so passionate about it. I was like, I really think it's like something that's worthwhile doing. And at that age, I was 24 at the time, maybe 25. And I was like, if I'm not going to do it now, when am I going to do it? Because everyone thinks, oh, you're really young to make that decision. But I also thought that I had no children, so no responsibility, minimal costs. I was living with my now husband, so like he was working, so we shared the costs. Like outgoings were really low. So yeah, I just thought, well, if at least if I try, then that's what I can do. And yeah, in the nicest way possible, I've not looked back since. It's 8 years now since I've been set up on my own.
And then I know obviously you said that you've weighed up all the risks and stuff, but was there a part of you that was thinking, what if it doesn't work? Or were you that confident in knowing that, you know what, I can do this? Like, what were your feelings then?
Yeah, if I think back, I probably was quietly confident. However, I think also, like I mentioned at the beginning, being a woman in the industry, financial advising, if I wanted to go back into like a job role rather than being self-employed as I am, there would always be an opportunity for me or something I could try. And also, I guess, even if there wasn't, I was still so young, so I had opportunities to change career, whatever that looked like. But I think in the back of my head, I know what I'm like as personality, and I was like, it will be fine.
I'm gonna do it. Yeah. So then so did you just go sort of cold turkey? Did you just sort of quit and just then go into now setting up my own business? And then how long did that take for you to build, you know, a comfortable, sustainable base?
Yeah. So the decision process obviously took a bit of time, but actually in being on like LinkedIn and seeing other people's stories, it's quite a familiar similar situation to many, is where I actually went on a 2-week holiday, and obviously it was a good time to have that space, reflection, and that what made that decision. So I'd say that was the end of November 16. Came back, obviously explained to the two guys that owned the business what I was looking to do, and actually they were supportive of it and appreciated me being open and honest, and also where I was in my career, it was still so early, so try it, why not try it? And then again, coming back to the regulation side of things, so I had clients that I was already looking after. They were confirmed that they want to follow me, so that all that kind of regulatory stuff, and then kind of changing what business I was regulated under. So obviously now I'm OCS Financial Planning, where I was before was kind of where I was earmarked as an advisor, now I'm obviously the director, and just those things. So actually probably took it then about 3-4 months. Quite a scary time over Christmas, because everyone's getting like New Year started like really quickly. And in that year, so in 2017, some of it, particularly again, things take longer over Christmas because people aren't working as much. Those things, that process took a bit longer than some. But it was quite seamless in the background, particularly most importantly for my clients. But there was obviously a lot of kind of times where I was kind of just transitioning. So it would depend on what practice I was advising under, I guess, is the answer. And then it was only me in the business for the first 2 years, because probably imagine it's a service business. So the overheads are low, but I kind of did it myself, did everything because I had time, because I was building my client bank again. And then my husband actually joined me at the end of 2019. And then the pandemic hit. And it was fine. Actually, the business sustained quite well over that time. But I also then fell pregnant over that time as well. Had 2 children. And but it's been growing steadily every year. I think my biggest year was last year, and I think that really comes down to kind of like being able to kind of put more back into it again for the first time since it has grown, because of the children, and back in like childcare and stuff like that. And I've loved every second of it. My clients have been amazing, and even my clients from day one have obviously still continued with me. And so it's really getting that balance, obviously making sure I look after my current clients, and then also growing the business to bring on new clients as well.
And in terms of, like you mentioned, a couple of things that you mentioned. First, you spoke about 14% of financial advisors are female. Why do you think that number's so low?
So 14. So I don't know. I think the stereotypical financial advisor is, dare I say, male, pale and stale. So and even that, like, the average age, even if you take the women conversation now, but the average age is still like mid-50s, late 50s.
Wow.
I think it's 2 things. First of all, there was a regulation that came in, I want to say probably about 10, 12, 15 years ago, whereby financial advisors had to have a lot more qualifications than they had previously to continue to advise. So I think that lost quite a bit of the kind of market. I also think it's kind of one of those where if you don't see it, you don't know whether it's for you or not. And for me, that's also a big driver for me, because I just think, like, as a woman financial advisor, I work predominantly with women, because it's just that kind of instant connection. You're comfortable with, obviously, very similar, might have families, similar ambitions and stuff like that. It's really nice because you obviously discuss really personal stuff with myself, and it's really important you have that kind of trust and you're comfortable straight away. I also, I just think that historically it was like finances in general was a men's world. I mean, I think it was only 50 years ago, in 1975, that a woman was allowed to open a bank account on her own without a male counterpart. So I think it probably all stems back then. Hopefully there's a big movement. I would love to see more women in the industry and support them. I'm actually just brought on a training advisor who's a lady, so it's really exciting. But sadly that's the statistic, and it's been like that for quite a while.
Gosh. And in terms of, I mean, I suppose it's one of those, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So if you're not front and centre or being promoted that, or you're not saying to glamorise being a financial advisor, but to at least be sort of in the eye of these people that could potentially consider it as a career option. Because I think yes, you're right. Traditionally, you do think financial advisor, you think of an older gentleman with a, a jacket, like a suit on, and
Tracksuit, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's so great that you're trying to sort of, not trying, well, you are sort of being the change that you want to see. What was it like when, because I'm conscious that you've mentioned that you were very young when you first started. How was that like in terms of you're trying to advise people, I would assume, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 to 30 years older than you? How was that like, yeah, how was that?
Yeah, it was, I was always told that, well, I was always made to think that it would be a barrier. But I actually don't think it was. I think it actually worked in my favour, and maybe that's just my stance on it, and obviously being kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, like optimistic about it. But there's two things to it. First of all, I had the knowledge, so obviously people seek financial advice because they know that they're not got that education. It's complex, and it is and it's forever changing as well, so rightly so that they want to make sure they get it right first time and see a financial advisor. So if someone's looking to work with you, then obviously you can help them irrelevant of your age, right? I guess the other question, how I kind of turned the kind of you're probably old enough to be my parent kind of conversation, not quite as blunt, but pretty much, was that I'm going to be with them for their whole lifetime, because financial planning isn't transactional. It's kind of a long-term relationship that I build with my clients. Like I said, I've had clients for 10 years and I've got roughly about 98% retention rate. So most of my clients stay with me, unless either they've spent the money, which is great because that's what I want them to do, or unfortunately they're not with us anymore. It's pretty much the only situation. So we're building very, very long-term relationships. So it's quite nice to say that halfway through your strategy to retirement, I'm not going to be retired. I'm going to go all the way through that strategy and be with you for a lifetime. I guess then it also helps with kind of a lot of the wealth nowadays is being intergenerational, so passing through generations. So it's like I might have a relationship with someone's parents and also their children and also their grandchildren, because that's who's going to receive it. It's really important that they start to get educated as soon as possible as well. So that's my kind of stance on it. By all means, obviously people, if I turn up at someone's door, they look at me and think, oh my God, she's young. But I think by the time we've kind of like helped them, discussed, and we've obviously had a conversation, I'm sure they just appreciate the knowledge that I can, and where I can add value to their position.
Yeah, like your skills and your skill set, and like you say, you can't put a price on that knowledge and sort of the qualifications that you've gained. And then I know that you talk about big picture a lot. Would you mind talking to me about that, if that's okay? Like what is that?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of things. I think it's to do with how we review someone's finances. So quite often we look at household position rather than individual, particularly if as a household you work your finances together. So if you've got two incomes coming into the household, all that gets intertwined within your expenditure. It's important that both people are in the room to have that conversation, because it's your hard-earned money. So that's one side of it. But the kind of wider scale is about kind of looking at what you want in various different time scales. So we always discuss kind of different goals that you have in short, medium and longer term. And I do actually call them financial goals when I'm having a meeting, but predominantly they're just goals, because we know that most things these days have some kind of monetary attachment to it, whether that's wanting to buy something for a monetary amount or wanting to retire and live your best life. What is that best life going to cost you? So it's all about looking at that bigger picture, and then kind of like understanding what strategies are applicable for all of those different things, because not one size fits all, and also different timescales will mean different strategies, and constantly reviewing that as well. So what I really want to understand when I kind of having a discovery call with an individual is what they want to achieve longer term, and that could be things that they don't even think they were going to discuss with me today, but it's great to like put everything down on paper. And also kind of their why, what motivates them, because we all know we often go to work to earn a living, but what we're doing it for, I know my why is my children and my family, and quite often that's similar circumstances with most people. But if you really understand your why, it also helps me build that strategy to help you kind of achieve what you want to achieve. And I think for me that's really important, kind of zooming out and looking at that for an individual, because the products that we hear thrown about all the time, so things like you need to get an ISA, you need to get a pension.
Yeah.
That's my job, to figure out what is the most tax efficient strategy to use, and they are kind of strategies that we do use. But if someone comes to me saying, I just want a pension, we still need to look at the bigger picture, because yes, it might be that is part of the strategy, but it might not be the only strategy, because we might want to combine it, whether that's tax efficiency, whether that's accessibility, and again, just completely personalised and tailored to that individual. And so I think, and also with my knowledge as well, and my qualifications, I can advise in all areas. So again, some financial advisors may only be able to be advising pensions or something like that. And again, I think it's really important to kind of have the ability to utilize all strategies, whichever is going to be best for the client's outcome.
And thank you for that. So I think, from, obviously you mentioned pensions, ISAs, that's what everybody thinks of. Like, I think, I'm going to talk for everybody at the moment, but stereotypically, if you think financial planning, you just think, oh, that just means you need a savings account, you need a pension, you need an ISA, and that's it. But I'm aware, I'm not fully aware as you are, because obviously you're trained in it, but I'm aware there are other strategies that you can look at. For example, like stocks and shares, property investing, things like that. Now, is there something that you would say, or maybe even like 3 things that you would say that, regardless of the why, you should absolutely do those 3? I'm just putting number 3 out there, but you should absolutely do X, Y, Z, regardless of your why, and you can add in other things to tailor it to you, would you say?
Yeah, I think with any kind of like financial planning is just getting the foundations right. So the foundations is really like making sure you can maintain your lifestyle. So you always want to make sure, obviously, you're fully aware of your cash flows, what's income and expenditure. You've got cash in emergency funds if something would happen. Your boiler was to break last night, you can get it fixed tomorrow, rather than having to wait for your next pay slip. And these aren't even kind of strategies that we implement, but it's what, as a base, I make sure all of my clients have got in place is to work together on other things. I think also you had to consider what, obviously, like I said, cash savings, not only emergency funds, but stuff that you're going to be needing the next 5 years, let's say. Keep it in cash, because when you go more sophisticated financial planning, there's things such as like volatility, whereby you want to give it a bit of time to make sure you've kind of seen the benefits of doing it and what it's for. Obviously, understand what your debt position looks like. Debts such as mortgages, obviously they're tied to your house and you've kind of got a payment plan for them, but things that are kind of like what I would class as short-term debt with high interest rates, really understanding what that is, whether it's best to keep them or try and pay them off sooner. And then another foundation that we actually don't hear about much, when other kind of people talk about finance, what you need to kind of have as a minimum is protection. And this is something I do normally first and foremost with my clients before we look at any other wider, more sophisticated strategies. And that's to do with all of strategies going forward, whether we're saving disposable income, or whether we're saving for retirement, saving for a house, helping the children go through school, university, whatever it looks like, whatever it is. We're very reliant on our health and our ability to earn income, and making sure that we can still carry on going to work to bring that income in that pays for all those things. And so from a kind of financial planning point of view, a lot of financial planning can easily fall down if you're not protected in the right way, in the sense of we've saved for this for children to go to university, but I'm seriously ill and off work for 12 months with no income. I'm going to have to dip into that. And so I dip into that. I'm fine. I kind of go back to work, but then I can't I can't help my kids at uni because that's completely had to be redirected for something else. Whereas we can look at like protection to put in place. So these are things such as like life insurance, critical illness, income protection is a massive one, which is effectively if you're off long-term sick. And again, a mixture, because I have a mixture of clients who are employed, but I also have quite a lot of business owner clients. And again, what is the best route to go down, a personal route or kind of a corporate business route if you own a business, and also that can also help with tax efficiencies and other bits like that. But I say that's the most commonly thing missed. And it's also that kind of, we're all invincible, right? Like we all, never happened to us until it happens, but then it's too late. Well, sadly, in the sense, obviously, they're my clients, but fortunately, they've got that right protection in place, that I've seen it too many times for me to kind of not give that kind of knowledge and recommendation effectively to an individual about what protection needs they should be looking to protect.
And I think I can 100% resonate with that, because being a business owner myself, and very much, say, a couple of years ago, I had a bit of a health situation. And that makes you rethink everything, and you think, what am I doing this for? Like, I'm working all these hours, I'm saving up for whatever, for that point, which, let's be honest, may never happen. If you don't look after yourself. And then I did start to think about, well, what have we got, like, in terms of, what if I can't pay my mortgage for 6 months because I've had my legs broken, or for me, if my hand's broken, I can't do my job.
Yeah.
And I think often people that I know and sort of must speak to see sort of, say, health, like life, critical illness cover, life insurance as a set, like someone's just trying to tell you something. It's almost like phone insurance. Like you're thinking, oh no, I'm not, like, if I break my phone, I get another one. Don't tell me the insurance. I think when you have, I'm not saying that if you don't have your own business, you shouldn't think about that. I think especially if you're a business owner, it's so important to look at something like that. And then when I started working with, that looked into my life insurance, critical illness, life insurance, and looked into the children as well, because I think you forget the children. I think it's not intentionally. You just think, well, they're young and they're healthy, they'll be fine. You start working out, like, how much, like, what is my life worth? That was like a really big conversation. I was like, you're asking me to put a price on my life, when what I thought it was worth. It was worth probably 3 times more than that, when you put everything together. But you need to have that conversation to understand that. And for me, it was a light bulb. It was years ago now, but it was a light bulb moment. And I just thought, like, fair enough, it's an expense month on month, but then it's protecting you and your children, for your life. And when she sort of advised, like you've just mentioned, that you can put certain things through your business to make it more tax efficient. So it's almost like a win-win, really. So I do think it's something that is often not looked at, or sort of maybe appreciated for the value it is. I think this, even when you go for like mortgages and stuff, they'll say, so have you thought about this? And you think, oh no, stop trying to sell me something else. Like, I don't want that. But then in your approach, like, it's always like a holistic approach. Like, you're looking at investing and all these strategies, but what happens? Something happens to you. So what? So
exactly. Exactly. It's like planning the what if scenarios, and a few things that you just said, like when it comes to mortgages, it's probably the only time that you've ever been, unless you see, if obviously got a financial advisor, you've been spoken about it before. But that's also one thing, that you might even have something to protect against your mortgage, but was that your mortgage 10 years ago and you've moved house twice since? When did you last review it and stuff like that? And like you said, we don't think twice about paying our car insurance, house insurance, mainly because we have to, but also, like, we don't, because we just do. But actually, we don't protect ourselves that are paying for all of those things. And like you said, and it's not just how much am I worth, or what do I bring in? Is that what I should protect? It's about, well, if I wasn't around, then my husband wouldn't be able to work as much, because he would have to go and collect the kids for after school and stuff like that, and all of those things, which is why it's kind of so personal. And I really recommend seeking advice on the best kind of package for you and what you're looking for. But absolutely, I think it's definitely something we're not talking about, and it's kind of typical Brits, because it's worst case scenario, we don't want to talk about it. Actually, like you've just explained, actually, ironically, the well-being you get from having that peace of mind is priceless. And I think once you kind of come away and you've kind of satisfied with that, it's much better having that protection and that reassurance than having 20 minutes of a difficult conversation about a what if scenario. Like you said, we only have to look at statistics these days, cancer statistics, it's like 1 in 2. So we all think we're invincible, but sadly, I would love us all to be, but sadly we're not. And I think it's really important that we reflect on that to kind of look after and protect what's most important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose on the back of that is, because I remember when I've had this conversation before, is wills. I don't know if that's something that you look at, but then even, I mean, it's morbid, let's be honest, it's a very morbid conversation.
I talk about death every day.
But and like you say, it's great that you talk about it every day, because it's one thing that is guaranteed in life that is going to happen.
Yeah, death and taxes, my two domains.
But hand in hand. And for me, when I was having that conversation, yes, it was morbid, yes, it was scary, but it was just things like the lady was sort of mentioning, well, who will look after your kids? You know, something was happened to both of you. And it's something that, like, even now, it gives me sort of shudders. I just think, well, you never ever, well, people might, I never ever thought of that eventuality. What if me and my husband were both in a car crash and we both died because we looked after my kids? And so then, like, I'm thinking, but it could happen. You know, it's
Yeah.
life. You can walk out the door today and that's it. Something, you might not ever come back home again. So
Yeah, exactly.
that led me to have conversations with family members to say, if anything was to happen to me, I'm going to write this in here.
Yeah.
You know, like, is that okay? And it's that, like you say, like you mentioned, it's having that almost that sort of security of, like, I've tried to look after everything that I can in every eventuality, and touch wood, that doesn't happen.
No.
If it does, then at least you know that, you know what, you're not just, it's planned for. And I think it's something that you do often. You think when you do it when you get older, you do well when you get older, you know, when you've got stuff to give away or whatever. But I think there's so much to explore now, like, you know, when you are younger. So digress.
No, and just to mention, as you mentioned, wills, it's a legal thing. It's not a financial thing that I do, but it is one of the first questions that we go through on our discovery call, because if I'm building up your financial position, I want it to go to who you want it to go to, because if you don't have a will, you die in what is called intestate, and effectively it is literally a flowchart that the government decides who's going to get it, and people are surprised about who they say is going to get their estate should something happen to them. And it's like, your will is your kind of your final wishes and what you want, and it's really important that you kind of get that noted down, so that obviously you've done your piece. But I also think also for the people you left behind, it's going to be the hardest time of their lives anyway. It just makes that whole process, which is really difficult because they've lost a loved one, much easier, because you've spoken about what you want, and they know that they're following that, rather than having to guess or hope. And that's really hard when that other person obviously is no longer here to kind of confirm that with. So definitely that's another thing on the agenda. It's not something I do, but it's definitely something that we discuss, and I recommend obviously that they seek legal advice to get one drawn up for them as well.
No, that's really helpful. So the other thing that I wanted to ask was, I know that you work with your husband. How's that?
It's actually really well. Like, I've spoken a few times about like working with husbands, and everyone's like, oh, I couldn't do it. I think the good thing about it is we have very different kind of roles within the business. I'm the client facing, have conversations with my clients, and he does kind of, it's called paraplanning. It's in the background. It's a bit like paralegal for legal firms, but it's kind of all the technical work. He will be happily just sat at a computer doing his work, whereas I'm either on calls, out seeing clients, much more kind of relationship kind of stuff. So ironically, we work together. We don't actually like see each other that much, especially when I'm out. So I think that helps. I think it also, like, the major benefit for us, and particularly obviously the last 4 years since having kids, is that we've got full flexibility, and it's been amazing that not only me but also my husband as well has been around for like the first years of their lives, and we're able to pick them up from nursery if they're ill, or when they go to school we'll be able to go to their school plays and stuff like that. And I think that's just something that, like, again, is quite priceless when you've got children, and it's something that we definitely don't take for granted, having the flexibility owning our own business. I do like to say I'm his boss, but if he was in the room, he'd be like, no. But it's I guess that's the blessing of it. I guess the one kind of negative to it is that our whole household is reliant on one income stream now. But again, that just motivates me even more. But I think it's one of those that's kind of it swings and roundabouts with anything, isn't it? And I think, again, like, come back to that flexibility that it gives us, then that far outweighs anything else in our opinion.
I suppose even though you're single income, there's two of you that can sort of really sort of go for it, really. You sort of support each other. which I think is really powerful. So although, like you say, it is just single income, you've got two brains to sort of go after.
Yeah, and it's really nice actually, because like not many people understand our industry. And if, let's say, my husband was I don't know, a joiner or something like that, like a tradesman, I couldn't like literally offload like I do to my husband because he wouldn't understand it. Whereas it's really nice to have that when I'm like moaning or had a bad day and frustrated or whatever that looks like, or good days as well. But he gets it straight away. It's not like a whole explanation thing as alongside it. So yeah, it does has its benefits.
And I suppose, do you work from home then? Do you both work from home?
We have a home office, so we actually have 3 other staff members, and we're quite lucky that we've got kind of like an it's a bit before we moved in, but they converted the garage and that's got independent access, so we use that as our home office. So yeah, we do work from home, which sometimes isn't great when you kind of like literally only take 2 minutes to get into the office.
So what I was going to say was, I suppose you've been able to offload to your husband, especially more so if you are working from home, because you haven't got that drive home where you can just sort of think about things or to ring someone and talk to them. You're literally from there to there, and you're like, you just want to vent, don't you? Like you say, it's when it's good or a bad day, we all have them, and you just want to just get out your system. Whereas if you're in the office environment, you might sort of go and talk to so and so on the next desk or whatever and say, do you know what, I felt like this. But I suppose that's something that you have to sort of balance at home. But you're quite fortunate, like you said, with your husband being in the same industry. He understands the nuances and the issues that you're sort of coming across. And I think once you've in the outpouring of emotion, you're like, okay, that's fine, okay, I can go back to it now, like, go back to business kind of thing.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's really nice. And I think as well, like naturally when you're a business owner, it could be quite a lonely place, because whether you're on your own or even if you have a team around you, it still can be quite lonely. So I think as well that also helps having that kind of support at home, and even like I said, that added bonus that he's in the same industry.
Perfect. And in terms of financial planning, I know we've spoken about what your strategies could be and the why. What about the when?
When's best to seek it? Yeah, great question. I think, obviously, I don't think there's a hard rule because, like I said, it's so individual to everyone and what's right for them. I would say, kind of going back to those foundations that I looked at, when you've kind of got them satisfied, or even if you're looking at protection, because that's something we include. So you've got your kind of emergency funds, you've got held back in cash what you want short term. You've understood what your debt looks like, and you don't need to repay any extra debt. Then I would say probably worth thinking about kind of looking at something to make your money work, the rest of your money work a bit harder for you. The earlier you start it, the better, because there's an amazing thing called compound interest. So if you start in your 20s and you can put £100 away a month, it could be the same as you starting £400 a month in your 40s. So it really does make a difference. And honestly, it is crazy sometimes when you do the maths. People always think, I need to have a certain amount of kind of like wealth, capital, earnings, and I just say, well, it's always just worth having, like, my discovery calls are complimentary and non-obligatory. So I always think, have a conversation. We can understand what your position looks like. Probably always do some protection, because that's the thing we'll do first anyway. And then secondly, after that, we'll discuss about if it's right for you right now. And that's something I really am passionate about, is not kind of rushing too many things at once, because it can be a lot to understand, particularly if you're only just starting on your financial planning journey. And I think it's really important to prioritize what's important to you at different stages. So it might not be that we're having a meeting to kind of like do everything in the next 6 months. It might be, we're doing this, we know that we'll probably check in a year's time to see where you are, or we can start small now, we can build up. And that's why it kind of like really depends on the individual circumstances. Again, coming back round to the difference between business owners and people who are employed and have a salary as such, is business owners probably start sooner rather than later because they don't get any work benefits. So you mentioned as well, going back to the whole protection piece, is that if you're working, you probably have some kind of death in service, maybe sick pay if you work for a larger corporation, and now everyone has to have a pension through auto enrollment if you're an employee, whereas if you're a business owner, you don't have any of those. So yes, it's probably worthwhile just kind of engaging in that. And I work closely with like accountants again as well to make sure that we can be tax efficient, and obviously most importantly, bottom line is individuals' cash flow, income and expenditure, making sure it's affordable and sustainable as well. And again, that's probably a myth that a lot of people think is it's going to be, I'm going to tell everyone to invest all of their money or like all their disposable income away. And again, like, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, it's really important that we get a balance. Because we work really hard for our money, and I think it's really important that you enjoy it now, but then also think about your future self. And that ultimately was what you do when you're investing, is thinking about your future self and what choices you will give yourself at that future date by doing something now that you don't need day to day per se. So yeah, it's all about, like I said, completely tailored to an individual when is best. I think a conversation is worth it any time. And then obviously they'll understand for their own position and what they're looking for, what the answer to that kind of when would be.
And would you say, is there ever a time where it's too late?
No. Because you can always do something. I think if you have that mindset of it's too late, you'll just never start. And yeah, I've had a conversation recently with someone in their kind of 50s, been self-employed majority of the time, they've never paid into a pension, and never think they're going to retire. Well, they've got disposable income now. Let's just do something, and then it gives you more options. Yes, you might have to still wait to state pension age because we do need a bit more time on our side. But even at state pension age, you're not just living off the state pension, which is like 11.5 grand a year. So I can't see many people living off that these days. Something is better than nothing, right? And I think that's why it's like never too late, really.
And in terms of for yourself then, because I know that different financial planners work differently. Do you, because I know you mentioned that you look after your clients sort of throughout their lifetime and throughout your lifetime. Do you charge sort of for that service monthly, yearly, or is it per product that how does that work?
Yeah. So I work with clients on a kind of like initial no obligation, no cost, because I think it's really important that I understand their financial position to see if I can even add value, because if I can't add value, I'm not doing my job, right? So really understand that. And I think it's really nice to do that without any kind of commitments from anyone. And I think that just allows us to, one, most importantly for me, is build that relationship quite quickly, because you've got that instant trust and you're trying to add value just from conversations, and then obviously to see if I can add true value going forward. And then if I work with a client longer term, and effectively I present various strategies and recommendations, and whether they want to go ahead with it or not is when they become a client, if they do want to go ahead with it. All charging structures are integrated into the advice, in the sense of my clients never pay me directly or anything like that. So it's always kind of like integrated into the advice, both on the initial advice point of view, and also most importantly, the ongoing advice fee is always integrated. So they don't pay me directly, but I also think it's really important to be open and transparent from the start of our conversations, that is what it looks like. And also, people actually question, like, Olivia, how are you getting paid? Like, you've done really well, make sure you get paid. And obviously that's I've explained it at that point, or I'm like, we're about to come on to that, we're going through a personalized illustration with yourself, but they might not see it physically because it gets taken proportionately throughout the year, so growth hopefully outweighs that kind of charge. But it's important that really do know what that looks like. And again, because financial planning is so bespoke and individual, that's kind of what we discussed at that kind of presentation meeting, about what that looks like and for each individual. But I think it's quite nice when I explain how that works in the beginning meetings, in the sense that they don't have to pay me directly or find additional funds for what we're doing. It's all integrated, because that's how I like to work.
And I think that's quite important, I think, because I think when you start to think financial planning, you start to think, oh, right, so they're going to help me invest, but then how much is it going to cost me? And I know that a lot of financial planners are set up like yourself, where it's integrated into the product. So me as a user, I would get the product that I'm wanting, and your payment will be taken care of by them. I think that gives it a level of peace of mind, especially if you're completely new to financial planning. You might be reluctant to sort of make that discovery call, like you say, because you're thinking, well, probably going to charge me £1,000 a month, you know, and I can't afford that, or, you know, there's something along those lines. And I think that transparency is key, because at least if we know that, you know, it's not going to cost us anything right now, then you're going to be reimbursed by whatever product you are sort of offering, which rightly so, because you're tailoring it to that person for their needs and, you know, for their budget, etc. And then you're going to be reimbursed for that. I think that's really key to know, really. And just sort of just dispel that it's going to cost you like £10,000 a year to have a financial planner, because that's not the case.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I think as well, like people just generally, whatever the service is, can get hung up on costs. But how I always discuss it with clients is kind of like a three-word approach. So you can kind of relate cost to like value, or the value added, and that's not just looking at your strategy, but it's how tax efficiency. So a lot of the time I've saved clients more taxes than they've paid in any fees to me. So that's obviously one of it, is like the value that you're adding, and again, that's part of obviously the knowledge and where I can invest in the peace of mind knowing it's regulated advice. The cost is the cost of you not doing something. So that's fine, don't do it, but we'll still be at the same position if we speak again in 10 years time. And all I want to do is help you and help you get there quicker, or if not on time. And then that's the cost. The price is obviously what you pay, but all that's kind of not as important when you see the benefits from the other two places. But yeah, of course, and I think each individual is different, and depending on the depth that an individual wants to go into, what that structure looks like, it's definitely a conversation that we're always willing to have. Really important that we get the important information across, but then obviously you can dig deeper in anything, can't you? So I think it is important that everyone understands that, but particularly like the value piece is what's really important to me, is how I'm adding that value to someone's position. And also, people are really busy and they've not got time to do it themselves, and like I said, it's complex, it's forever changing, legislation changes at least twice a year in a budget, and we adapt all of those plans for our clients in real time. So it just gives them that peace of mind knowing that their future's looked after.
That's absolutely, because I think as a business owner, like you've just said, usually time poor, I think, in general. And you want to do all these things, you want to invest, you want to make sure you've done your will, you want to make sure you've got, you know, health protection and whatever, but it's finding the time to do it. And I think you can try and do it yourself, like you say, you can do it yourself. I reckon maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, you still haven't figured out like time to try and sit down and do it. So you also, I think, within those fees are paying for that, you know, the fact that you're having it done right now to sort of to change your life right now for your future. So I think that also needs to be sort of factored in when people are sort of looking at sort of financial advice, really. That you could do it yourself, maybe. There might be risks involved in that, and you might not get it right, or you could just let somebody who knows exactly what they're doing sort your money out, your finances out, and then at least that's one less thing you've got to worry about when you're trying to run your own business. So that's really important.
And again, just enables you to focus back on your why, what's important to you, rather than the finances.
Absolutely. And then what I wanted to talk to you about was your travel. So I read that you've travelled to 39 countries. How have you done that?
So again, within the world that I'm in, I see clients how they spend their money. For me, like, our holidays are our luxury. Like, we pretty standard living. Like, I don't buy anything designer or anything like that. But I love to travel. I was very lucky. I did a lot of it in kind of like my younger years. So like after uni, I did a little bit, and do like bigger stints, so like 6 weeks. So I saw 6 countries in 6 weeks kind of thing. But it's definitely something that me and my husband both really enjoy. We've done more European stuff over the last 4 years since the kids, but actually this year we're trying our first long haul with the kids in May, so looking forward to it. But it's definitely a big passion of mine. And also, if I get talking about travel with clients, like, the conversations can go for hours, that's on their financial goals. They want to travel somewhere this way, or they've been there, and I'm like, oh great, I'm adding more to my list, and then my list is getting longer and longer about where I want to go. But I've kind of, and a few years ago I was like, I don't want to go to the same place twice, but then I've started to really enjoy places, and particularly going back like from when I was like younger, also going back with a family, there'll be completely different experiences.
Experience,
So yeah, it's definitely something I enjoy doing. And yeah, I definitely like to see the world. And I speak French, so I try and use that where I can, but obviously with my career I don't use it day to day. But there's quite a few French speaking countries, so an excuse to go on holiday, I think.
Absolutely. And I suppose I'm not a financial planner by any means, but I my advice to people that I know is I always say that the money you spend on travel is guaranteed to make you richer, because you just the experiences that you have when you travel, you cannot put a price on that. But obviously I'm not a
100% agree.
I'm not a financial.
I'll back you on that. I'd back you on that. That's great.
Olivia said it is fine, she's regulated.
No, I'll back you on that. And I think that's it. And coming back to, again, actually, when we do financial planning, about getting that blend, because what makes you richer in monetary values also is important in what makes you richer in memories and experiences as well.
Absolutely. And so the last thing I wanted to touch on was financial planning at schools. So in terms of, I know when I was at school, and for my children, I've got 3 children, and they're at school, no one really talks about financial planning in schools. And obviously Rich Dad Poor Dad sort of talks about that a lot in his book, that, you know, we're not taught how to spend our money, you know, in a school setting. What are your views on that?
Something I'm passionate about. I do actually do talks at local schools, free for children, and just kind of like giving them that understanding, I guess, as well. Also, my views on it a little bit torn, obviously coming from a family of teachers. I know how stretched teachers are, one, in what they do day to day, and also, again, in the complexities, they don't have the knowledge themselves to feel confident to teach the children that. So I do think there's some work to be doing there. I do think it needs to be integrated into some kind of curriculum. But I definitely think as well it can also start at home. I did a bit of a mini series on my LinkedIn last year about educating children and kind of like little things you can start doing at home and how you can start discussing with children, because your money habits are set by the age of 7, which is a scary fact. And I don't want people to be kind of overwhelmed by that, because it doesn't mean you can't reteach them or teach them, but it's just about what they see at home. So in the first 7 years of your life, you know, kids, they just absorb everything. So it's about how you speak about money at home, how you act around money, what you kind of if you're frugal, or whether kind of the vocabulary you use about money, whether it's like, oh, we can't afford that, or anything like that. Just really kind of then going a bit further, potentially like explaining what that looks like. Or my child wants something, and it's like, no, well, you've got £2, if you save for the next 3 weeks, you can buy it. And then also the importance of, if you still want it in those 3 weeks, which is also kind of delayed gratification, is something that we should all be learning. So I definitely think that at school it could be done, but I also think there's no reason why we can't start it at home without that education. And so it's a big passion of mine. Actually, one of my goals, I'm not put a time scale on it because I'm so busy, but I actually want to write some children's books around money, kind of so that it helps that conversation. It's not going to be like boring fictional. It's going to be what's the word? No, it's going to be fictional. Sorry, it's not going to be non-fictional where it's like kind of like a homework book. It's going to be a story that encompasses kind of like some of the things that I think are really important to learn so young. So it's a big passion of mine. But yeah, sadly, I think it does need to be in schools, but how they're going to integrate that and it be right is a difficult thing. So I think, and I know so many of the financial advisors do give their time to go into schools and do talks to children of different ages. So I think that's really important as well.
Okay, thank you for that, because that's just one of the things that I was intrigued on your view of it, coming from your sort of background. And I would 100% agree with, obviously you can do it at home for free. You know, you can start to sort of educate your children, but then it depends on what your money sort of pattern is, I suppose, and how you see it.
Exactly.
Transfer, it's almost like if you're not great with it, you don't want to transfer that on. But you still got to educate them in some aspect of how to be sort of good with money. And then just to sort of summarise, really, in terms of, you mentioned that there's only 14% of financial advisors are female, which I'm really shocked at that statistic. And then you spoke about that. Obviously, we can start sort of our financial planning journey at any point of our life, whether that's sort of early on or later on. It's to do something rather than do nothing. And then obviously it's you can either go with yourself and then skip out those 5, 6, 7 years, or you can try and do it yourself, and then you might find that you haven't actually got that. But then what I wanted to sort of touch on again, just as we wrap up, is that you offer a free discovery call to talk through these issues, which I think is fantastic, because sometimes people are a little bit nervous, think I don't want to be sold something straight away, or they just don't know, they just don't have any idea of what this can entail. So to access that discovery call, is that done via your LinkedIn, or is it on your website, or is it both?
Yeah, so on my website there's like make an inquiry form. I think that comes directly to me. Yeah, on my LinkedIn my DM's always open. So yeah, kind of there's options, and it's just kind of saying that you want to get in a call and have a conversation, whether you want the full discovery call, again, it's complimentary, so I don't see why not, or whether you just want to quickly jump on a phone call for 10 minutes just to check that you do want to book in that discovery call, if that makes sense. So yeah, either my website or I'm trying to post. Well, I used to post every day on LinkedIn, stopped for a little bit, and February is my month to get back on. So if you see my LinkedIn in February, I'll be regularly on there, hopefully giving some extra value and education there as well.
Perfect. So what I'll do is I'll pop the links to your website and your LinkedIn on the show notes, so people can just contact you via that. Thank you so much for today, Olivia. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you guys on the next one.